There is a world that exists parallel to the one you live in. You do not see it. You are asleep when it happens. Tucked into your bed, your curtains drawn, your phone charging on the nightstand, the particular silence of a house at 3 a.m. settling around you like something physical. But out there, on the highways, on the interstates, on the two-lane state roads that cut through deserts and mountains and forests and the flat endless nothing of the American Midwest, another world is moving. 18 wheels. Diesel engines. The low groan of a fully loaded trailer taking a curve at highway speed. The specific amber glow of a truck cab at night. That small warm bubble of light and radio static and coffee smell moving through the absolute darkness of a road that has no streetlights and no other cars and no evidence that human civilization exists anywhere within 50 miles. Truck drivers spend more time alone on dark roads than any other category of human being on Earth. The average long-haul trucker drives somewhere between 100,000 and 125,000 miles every year. Let that number sit for a moment. That is circling the Earth 5 times. That is driving from New York to Los Angeles and back again 25 times. In a single year. A significant portion of those miles happen at night. Because freight does not sleep. Because deadlines do not respect the sun. Because the economics of trucking require drivers to move when the roads are clearest, which is midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., the hours when the rest of the world has surrendered to darkness and the highway belongs, almost entirely, to the trucks. And in all those miles, in all those hours, in all that darkness and silence and the particular altered state of consciousness that comes from driving alone through the night for 6, 8, 10 hours straight, truck drivers see things. I have spent months collecting these accounts, talking to drivers, reading forums where truckers share what they have experienced on the road, reviewing documented cases, police reports, and first-hand testimonies from men and women with millions of miles between them and a very specific kind of knowledge, the knowledge of what the American highway looks like when the rest of America is not watching. What they have told me is not comfortable. Some of it is explainable. Some of it is strange but rational. And some of it, a significant portion of it, is the kind of thing that experienced, practical, level-headed professional drivers with decades behind the wheel describe in the careful, reluctant language of people who know what they saw and have spent years trying to find a rational explanation and have not found one. This is their world. These are their stories. Turn the lights up. Or don't. Your choice. But do not say you were not warned. Before the stories, you need to understand something about what driving alone at night actually does to a human being. Because the night road is not simply the day road with the lights off. It is a fundamentally different psychological environment. And understanding that environment is essential to understanding what drivers experience in it. The first thing the night road does is eliminate context. During the day, when you drive through a landscape, you have context. You can see the fields on either side of the road. You can see the farmhouse in the distance. You can see the water tower on the horizon that tells you a town is coming up. The world has depth and breadth and detail that places you within it. You know where you are because you can see where you are. At night, all of that disappears. Your headlights illuminate approximately 200 to 300 feet of road ahead of you. Beyond that, nothing. The darkness is complete. You are, in the most literal sense, driving into a void. The world beyond your headlights does not exist for you. It could be anything. It could be open prairie or dense forest or the edge of a cliff. You are moving through a tunnel of light with absolute darkness on all sides. This is disorienting in ways that accumulate over hours of driving. The second thing the night road does is alter consciousness. The human brain is not designed for sustained vigilance through the hours between midnight and 4 a.m. These are the hours when the circadian rhythm is at its lowest, when the body most insistently demands sleep. Driving through these hours requires a constant, active effort to override what the body wants to do, which is to close its eyes. Experienced truckers manage this with coffee, with radio, with the careful management of their own alertness. But even the most experienced driver exists, during these hours, in a slightly altered state. Not impaired exactly, but not fully ordinary either. The edges of perception are slightly different. The relationship between what is real and what the tired brain constructs is slightly less reliable than it is at noon on a Tuesday. The third thing the night road does is amplify. When something is wrong in your peripheral vision at 3 a.m. on a dark highway, It hits differently than it does at 3 p.m. on a busy street. Because the context of danger is already present. Because you are alone. Because the isolation is absolute. Because there is no one to call out to, no passerby to verify what you are seeing, no easy reference point of normalcy. These three factors, the elimination of context, the alteration of consciousness, and the amplification of perceived threat, create the conditions in which the stories you are about to hear happen. Are they hallucinations? Some of them, possibly. Are they misperceptions? Certainly some. Are they genuine, documented, verified incidents that have no rational explanation? More of them than you might be comfortable with. The first category of highway story that drivers tell most frequently involves hitchhikers. And not in the ordinary way. Every trucker has a hitchhiker story. The person on the side of the road with a thumb out, the decision to stop or not stop, the conversation in the cab, the drop-off at the next town. These are ordinary. These are the texture of the road. What I am talking about is different. James Whitfield has been driving long-haul routes for 23 years. He runs a regular route through Nevada and Utah, which means he knows those roads the way most people know their own neighborhood. He knows every rest stop, every grade change, every stretch of highway where the wind comes from a certain direction at a certain time of year. He knows the road between Ely, Nevada, and the Utah border the way he knows his own face in the mirror. On a night in October about 8 years ago, he was running that route at around 2:30 in the morning. Clear night. No weather. Road completely empty in both directions as far as his lights could reach. He saw a woman standing on the shoulder. Not walking. Standing. Completely still. Facing the road. She was wearing a white dress. He remembers this specifically because it was October in Nevada and the temperature that night was in the low 40s. She had no coat, no bag, no visible car anywhere near her. He slowed down. He pulled over. He rolled down his passenger window. She was gone. Not gone in the sense of having walked away. There was no time. He had slowed and pulled over within seconds of seeing her. She was gone in the sense of not being there. He looked in his mirrors. He got out of the cab and looked around. Nothing. Nobody. The desert on both sides of the road, flat and empty and going nowhere. He got back in the truck. He sat for a moment. He drove on. He did not tell anyone about this for 3 years. When he finally told it, at a truck stop in Utah, to a driver he had known for 15 years, the other driver did not laugh. Did not dismiss it. He said, that exact stretch of road. White dress. Standing still. He had seen it too. 2 drivers. Years apart. Same road. Same figure. Neither of them has driven that stretch of Nevada highway at night again. This is not an unusual story. Not the specific details, the white dress, the Nevada desert, the 2 independent witnesses. But the structure. The structure of this story, the figure seen, the vehicle stopped, the figure gone, appears in driver accounts from every part of the country. From drivers who have never spoken to each other. From men and women with completely different backgrounds and temperaments and levels of what might be called susceptibility to suggestion. The hitchhiker who is not there when you stop. It is the most common inexplicable account in the trucker community. And it has been happening for as long as there have been highways. Robert Chen has been driving for 18 years. He is not a person given to exaggeration or drama. He speaks in the measured, factual way of someone who spends a lot of time alone and has learned to trust observation over interpretation. He was running a night route through eastern Colorado in the spring of 2015. A straight, flat, entirely unremarkable stretch of I-70 at around 3 a.m. He was the only vehicle he could see in either direction. And then there were 2 of them. A truck appeared in his mirrors. Behind him. Running lights on, headlights on, the profile of a standard 18-wheeler approximately a quarter-mile back. This is not unusual. Trucks share the highway. He noted it and continued driving. For the next 2 hours, the truck behind him never changed distance. Never gained. Never fell back. Maintained the exact same gap, a quarter-mile, regardless of his speed. He tested this. He slowed to 55. The truck behind slowed to maintain the gap. He pushed to 75. The truck behind accelerated to maintain the gap. 2 hours. consistent, exact. He called dispatch. He called his wife. He debated pulling over. He decided not to pull over, reasoning that if something was wrong with the truck behind him, stopping on a dark Colorado highway at 3 a.m. was not a better option. He reached a truck stop. He pulled in. He watched his mirrors. The truck behind him did not pull in. He got out of his cab and looked at the entrance to the truck stop, expecting to see the truck pass on the highway, continuing east. No truck passed. He stood at the entrance for several minutes. Nothing. He went back to his cab and looked at his dashcam footage. The dashcam footage, the forward-facing camera, which was all he had, showed nothing relevant. But when he reviewed the footage from a driver-facing camera he had installed after a previous incident, he noticed something. In his mirror, the wide-angle side mirror visible in the driver-facing footage, the truck was visible. 2 hours of footage. A truck maintaining exact distance. Running lights on. Headlights on. And something else that he only noticed when he paused the footage on a specific frame. The truck's running lights were on. Its headlights were on. But there were no headlight beams. No light projected forward from those headlights. Headlights create beams. Beams are visible in darkness, particularly in the high-altitude Colorado night air. Light projects forward from headlights and illuminates the road ahead of the vehicle. This truck's headlights were on but projected no light. Robert Chen has shown this footage to other drivers, to a mechanic, to his dispatcher. Nobody has offered an explanation that satisfies him. He still drives. But he checks his mirrors differently now. There are rest stops on American highways that truckers avoid. Not officially. There are no signs. No warnings. No official documentation of anything wrong with these locations. They appear on maps like any other rest stop, a small blue rectangle with a picnic table symbol, the universal signal for a place to park and stretch and use the facilities. But among drivers who run certain routes, certain rest stops are known. Quietly known. The knowledge passed the way all important knowledge travels in the trucking community, at truck stops, in brief conversations, in the understated language of experienced people who choose their words carefully. Don't stop at the rest stop on Route 40 between Needles and Barstow after midnight. Don't park at the one on I-90 in Montana. The one with the broken light on the east end. Don't use the facilities at the rest area near mile marker 247 on I-10. Not alone. Not at night. These warnings exist. Every driver on those routes has heard some version of them. Sometimes the reason is practical. There have been incidents. Robberies. Assaults. The kind of crime that happens in isolated locations with no cameras and no witnesses and people traveling alone with cash and a vehicle. But sometimes the reason is harder to articulate. Danny Morrison has been running the I-40 corridor for 14 years. He is from Memphis. He is a practical man who attended church every Sunday. He was home and did not believe in ghosts or supernatural anything and would tell you so directly if you asked. He stopped believing he did not believe in anything after a night at a rest stop in New Mexico. It was 2019. He was 4 hours into a 10-hour overnight run. He needed to use the facilities. He pulled into a rest stop he had used dozens of times before without incident. The parking lot was empty. It was 2:15 in the morning. This was normal. He went inside, used the facilities, came back out. His truck was the only vehicle in the lot. And yet, and this is the part that he has difficulty saying out loud even now, every single parking space in the lot had a set of tire tracks in the gravel. Fresh tire tracks. Wide tracks, the width of truck tires. As if every space had been recently occupied by vehicles that were no longer there. He stood in the lot and counted the tracks. 14 spaces. 14 sets of tracks. All of them fresh, the gravel still disturbed, the edges of the impressions still sharp, the way gravel looks when something heavy has just pulled off of it. No vehicles. No sounds. No headlights receding on the highway. Nothing. He got in his truck and he drove. He did not stop again until he reached Albuquerque. He has not used that rest stop since. This one is different from the others. This one has a police report. June 14, 2017. Interstate 80, Nebraska. Approximately 1:47 in the morning. Truck driver Marco Espinoza, running a load from Denver to Chicago, was approaching an overpass approximately 30 miles west of Lincoln. He had been driving for 6 hours. He was alert, caffeinated, running on schedule. He saw a child on the overpass. A child, he estimated 8 to 10 years old, standing on the outside of the overpass railing, facing the highway below. Not moving. He immediately called 911. He pulled over on the shoulder beneath the overpass and activated his emergency flashers. He got out of his cab. There was no child on the overpass. He could see the full length of the overpass from his position. It was perhaps 100 yards long. Both ends were visible. There were no access roads adjacent to the overpass that would allow rapid departure. The overpass crossed nothing but highway and flat Nebraska farmland. There was no child. The 911 operator remained on the line. A Nebraska State Patrol unit arrived within 11 minutes. The officers searched the overpass and the area around it. Nothing. The police report exists. Marco Espinoza's 911 call is logged. The responding officers documented the search and the absence of anything found. Marco Espinoza has been asked about this incident many times in the years since. He does not waver. He saw a child on that railing. He saw the child clearly enough to estimate their age. He saw them clearly enough to be certain they were outside the railing and not behind it. He is not the only driver who has reported seeing a child on a highway overpass in the middle of the night. This is one of the categories of highway sighting that appears across multiple independent accounts, multiple states, multiple years. Children in locations where children cannot logically be, at hours when children cannot logically be there, who disappear before any responding party can reach them. The explanations range from the mundane, runaway children, children in crisis, children whose disappearance from the specific location can be explained by the response time involved, to explanations that nobody with a professional reputation wants to be on record supporting. Marco Espinoza has his own explanation. He will tell you what it is if you ask him directly. He does not drive through Nebraska at night anymore. He reroutes. He loses time. He takes the cost. Some things, he says, are worth the cost. The median of an American interstate highway is not a place for human beings. This seems obvious. The median is the strip of land between opposing lanes of traffic, sometimes a grass strip a few yards wide, sometimes a concrete barrier, sometimes a broad grass section on a divided highway. Whatever its width, it is not a place where people stand. It is not a place where people should be, at any hour, and particularly not at 3 in the morning on a section of highway far from any exit. And yet, the figure in the median is one of the most frequently reported highway anomalies in the trucker community. Described so consistently, across so many independent accounts, that the consistency itself demands attention. A figure. Standing in the median. Not moving. Not waving. Not signaling distress. Just standing. Looking at the road. Or looking at the trucks as they pass. Linda Kowalski has been driving for 11 years. She runs Midwestern routes, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri. She is methodical and thorough and not given to what she calls magical thinking. She has seen deer, coyotes, raccoons, and once an escaped llama on the highway median. She has seen abandoned cars, abandoned furniture, abandoned mattresses. She has seen the figure twice. First time, I-74 in Indiana. 3:20 a.m. A tall figure, dark clothing, standing in the median between the eastbound and westbound lanes. She was in the westbound lanes. The figure was perhaps 30 yards from her as she passed. It was facing her lane. It was completely still. She watched it in her mirror as she passed. It did not turn to watch her. It did not move. Second time, 2 years later. Different road. I-70 in Missouri. 2:55 a.m. Same figure. She does not say she is certain it was the same figure because she is a careful person who does not overclaim. But she says it was the same kind of figure. Same stillness. Same complete absence of any human behavioral cue, no movement, no reaction to the passing truck, no indication of awareness. She pulled over and called 911 both times. Both times the responding unit found nothing in the median. She has discussed this with other drivers. The responses she has received have, over the years, divided into two categories. Category 1. The driver has also seen something in a median. Somewhere. At some point. That they cannot fully explain. Category 2. The driver changes the subject. Neither category has given her a satisfying explanation. Every truck has a CB radio. Citizens Band Radio, the communication system that truckers have used for decades to warn each other about hazards, speed traps, road conditions, and the 1,000 practical concerns of professional highway driving. CB radio operates on specific channels. Channel 19 is the standard highway channel. Drivers monitor it, contribute to it, use it as a kind of moving community bulletin board. What it does not broadcast, under normal circumstances, is what Gary Patterson heard on a stretch of I-40 in Tennessee at 4 in the morning in the winter of 2016. Gary was alone. No other trucks visible in either direction. He had Channel 19 on at low volume, as always, background presence, monitoring for anything relevant. And then a voice came through. Clear. Unhurried. A man's voice. Talking about a specific road, the exact road Gary was on. Describing it in specific detail, the curve coming up, the grade change after the bridge, the rest stop at the next exit. All accurate. All correct. And then the voice began describing Gary's truck. The color. The make. The load markings visible on the trailer. Gary picked up his handset. He asked who was on the channel. No response. The voice continued. It described what Gary had eaten for dinner at the truck stop 6 hours earlier. It described the photograph on his dashboard, a photograph of his daughter that he had taken 3 months before. Gary put the truck on cruise control and held the handset in his hand and listened, not breathing, for what the voice would say next. It said, "You should not have taken this road tonight." And then the channel was silent. Gary spent the next 2 hours driving in the specific way that people drive when they are trying very hard to appear normal while experiencing something that is the opposite of normal. Both hands on the wheel. Eyes on the road. Not turning the radio back on. He reached his destination. He delivered his load. He sat in a diner for 2 hours before he trusted himself to call his wife. He has told this story to other drivers 3 times. 2 of them ended the conversation quickly. One, a man with 30 years behind the wheel who ran the same Tennessee corridor, told Gary that the specific stretch of I-40 in question was known for radio anomalies. That drivers had been hearing things on Channel 19 on that stretch for as long as anyone could remember. That knowing this did not make it less frightening. That was, Gary says, somehow the most disturbing thing about the conversation. This category of highway experience is the one that investigators and psychologists have spent the most time examining. Because it is the most documented, the most reported to authorities, and in several cases, the most inexplicable. The accident that already happened. A driver comes around a curve or over a hill and sees, in their headlights, a crash. A serious crash. Vehicles off the road, debris in the lanes, the specific chaos of a collision scene. The driver stops. The driver gets out. The driver looks for injured people to help. There is no crash. The road is clear. Unmarked. No debris. No tire marks. No damaged vehicles. Nothing. This has happened to enough drivers, on enough different roads, that it has been categorized by paranormal researchers as a specific phenomenon, residual haunting, some call it. An imprint. The idea that a particularly traumatic event leaves some kind of trace on the location where it occurred, a trace that some people, and specifically some drivers, in the particular altered state of night driving consciousness, can perceive. Researchers are careful with this interpretation. Because the rational explanation is compelling, a tired driver, in the early hours of the morning, experiences a hypnagogic hallucination, the kind of vivid, real-seeming vision that occurs in the threshold state between waking and sleep. The brain, starved of stimulation on a featureless highway, generates its own. But the accounts that resist this explanation are the ones where the location is later confirmed to have been the site of a serious accident. Where the driver, who had no prior knowledge of the road's history, describes seeing a crash in a specific location, and subsequent research reveals that a fatal accident occurred at that exact location. Sometimes years before. Sometimes decades. Thomas Briggs runs a southeastern route. He has been driving for 16 years. He is an amateur historian and a methodical man who keeps detailed logs of his routes. On a section of Alabama highway in 2018, he saw what he describes as a multi-vehicle accident. Several cars. Serious damage. He stopped. He called 911. He reported an accident at the mile marker he could clearly read on the roadside. The 911 operator paused. Asked him to confirm the mile marker. He confirmed it. The operator told him that there was no accident at that location. That no accident had been reported on that highway that night. When he returned home, Thomas Briggs looked up the accident history of that mile marker on Alabama highway records. In 1987, 31 years before he saw an accident there, a 5-vehicle crash at that exact location had killed 4 people. He has driven that route twice since then. He takes a different road now. Different from the hitchhiker. Different from the figure in the median. This is the woman who is in the road. Not on the shoulder. Not on the median. In the road. Standing in the travel lane. At highway speed. At night. The first instinct of any driver who sees a person standing in a travel lane is the same: brake, swerve, avoid. The situation is immediately dangerous and the response is immediate and physical. What distinguishes the genuine emergency, a person in crisis, a pedestrian in danger, a situation requiring response, from what some drivers describe is what happens next. When the truck passes through the space where the figure was standing. Because the truck passes through. Not around. Through. No impact. No sound. No vibration. No evidence of contact with anything. And the figure, visible in the driver's side mirror for the fraction of a second before the cab's mirror angle changes, is still standing in the road. Behind the truck now. Facing away. Unmarked. This account appears in trucker testimony from every region of the country. Always at night. Almost always between 2 and 4 in the morning. Almost always on roads that are empty except for the driver's vehicle. The psychological explanation is the highway hypnosis event, the brain generating a figure in the road as a test of the driver's alertness, a desperate override of the drowsiness that the night hours create. The brain invents a crisis to force the driver awake. This explanation is satisfying up to the point where the driver does not feel drowsy. Where the driver has been well rested and caffeinated and alert. Where the figure appears not at the end of a long monotonous stretch but in the first hour of a run, when alertness is at its peak. Sarah Mendez drives night routes in Texas. She has 11 years and over 1 million miles. She is not a person who drowses at the wheel. She has never had an incident, never had a citation, never had a complaint from any shipper or dispatcher. She has seen the woman in the road 4 times. Different roads. Different years. Same woman. Or the same kind of woman. White dress. This detail appears in too many independent accounts to be coincidental. Dark hair. Standing in the travel lane. Facing away from oncoming traffic. Passed through on 3 of the 4 occasions. On the 4th occasion, Sarah stopped before she reached the figure. She stopped the truck. She turned on her hazard lights. She sat in the cab and watched the figure through her windshield. The figure did not move for 6 minutes. Sarah watched the clock. 6 minutes. And then the figure turned around. Sarah Mendez cannot describe what she saw when the figure turned around. She has tried. She has said only that it was not a face. That the front of the figure was like the back of the figure, hair, the back of a head, where a face should be. She called her dispatcher. She sat on the highway with her hazard lights on until another vehicle passed and its headlights swept the road ahead of her. The figure was gone. She has not driven that road at night again. Long-haul trucking is solitary work. Most drivers run solo, alone in the cab for hours at a stretch, the passenger seat empty, the space beside them occupied only by a jacket, a cooler, a phone charging in the cup holder. The accounts in this section involve that empty passenger seat. Not becoming occupied in any visible sense, but behaving as if it were. The temperature change. Drivers describe a sudden, localized drop in temperature on the passenger side of the cab. Not the whole cab, specific to the passenger seat area. In the middle of summer. On roads where the windows are closed and the air conditioning is running at the same setting it has been running for the last 3 hours. The weight shift. Several drivers describe a change in the way their truck handles. A subtle but perceptible shift in weight distribution, as if something of significant mass has settled into the passenger seat. Experienced drivers are attuned to how their vehicle handles. They know the difference between a load shift and something else. Several have stopped to check their load, found everything secured, and returned to a cab where the handling anomaly persisted. The reflection. This is the one that appears most frequently and is described most consistently across independent accounts. Driving at night, on a dark road, the driver glances at the passenger side window. The window acts as a mirror in darkness. When the outside is darker than the inside cab, the window reflects the cab interior back at the driver. Drivers use this incidentally as an additional rear-view angle. Several drivers describe seeing, in this reflection, the passenger seat occupied. Not by a clear figure. Not by something that could be described in detail. By a presence. A shape. A density of something in the reflection that corresponds to the passenger seat being occupied. When they look directly at the passenger seat, it is empty. When they look back at the window reflection, the presence is still there. Phil Harrison has driven for 26 years. He is the kind of driver who ran 3 million miles without incident and was featured in a trade publication for it. He is methodical and experienced, and the last person you would expect to use the word presence in any sentence that does not involve a formal introduction. He uses it for what he saw in his passenger window on I-90 in South Dakota at 3:30 in the morning in October 2020. Something in the seat beside him. Visible in the window. Not visible when he looked directly. He spent the next 4 hours driving without looking at his passenger window. He tells new drivers about it. Not to frighten them. To prepare them. He says, if it happens to you, do not look directly. Just keep driving. It will be gone by dawn. And then, he says, every driver asks him the same question. Has it always been gone by dawn? And he pauses before answering. He says, so far. There are roads in America that drivers have stopped using not because something happened on them but because of something at the end of them. Or rather, something that appears to be at the end of them and then is not. The town that isn't on the map. Several drivers, independently, from different regions, with no apparent connection to each other, describe pulling off a highway in the early hours of the morning to find gas or food or rest, following the signs for what appears to be a small town, driving through streets that are lit and have buildings and appear completely real and functioning, and then, in some cases after stopping, in some cases after driving through without stopping, finding themselves back on the highway with no memory of turning around and no exit visible for the town they just drove through. No town. No exit. On the map, nothing but highway for the miles they just covered. David Kwan has driven for 19 years. He runs West Coast routes. He is an engineering graduate who worked in logistics management before getting behind the wheel and who approaches everything with what he calls systematic skepticism. He drove through a town in Oregon in 2017 that he cannot account for. He was on a state highway. He needed fuel. He saw signs, actual road signs, the green highway signs with white lettering, official-looking, the kind that are produced by state transportation departments, for a town 5 miles ahead. He followed them. He drove through what he describes as a small, fully functioning town. Lit storefronts. A gas station, closed, but present. A diner with lights on inside. Streets that were laid out in a grid. Street signs at intersections. He did not stop because nothing was open. He drove through. He came out the other side onto the highway. When he reached his destination and looked up the area on a map, there was no town. No unincorporated community. Nothing. A state forest and the highway and nothing else for 30 miles. He drove that highway again 3 months later, looking specifically for the exit he had taken. He found nothing. The highway ran straight and uninterrupted through what was, evidently, only trees. He filed an incident report with his company. His dispatcher suggested he had been running on insufficient sleep. He had logged 7 hours the night before. He does not have an explanation. He has the memory. He has the road in his mind as clearly as any road he has ever driven. The layout of the streets. The color of the diner's awning. The specific font on the street signs. He has never seen that town again. He has never found it on any map. He drives that route regularly. He keeps looking. Not all of these stories live only in the memories and forums of the drivers who experience them. Some of them have paper trails. The case of the I-70 Phantom Trucker is perhaps the most extensively documented example of a highway anomaly that entered the official record. Between 2009 and 2011, the Colorado State Patrol received 47 separate reports from truck drivers of a specific incident on a 40-mile stretch of I-70 in the mountains west of Denver. The reports described, with extraordinary consistency, the same event: a truck appearing in mirrors with no apparent point of origin, following at a fixed distance for a period of time ranging from 20 minutes to several hours, and then disappearing from mirrors simultaneously with the driver reaching a specific mile marker, the same mile marker in every single report. 47 reports. Different drivers. Different companies. Different times of year. Different weather conditions. Different times of night. The same 40-mile stretch. The same following truck. The same specific mile marker at which it disappeared. The State Patrol investigated. They increased patrol frequency on the relevant stretch of highway. They installed additional monitoring equipment at the specific mile marker identified in the reports. They interviewed 30 of the 47 drivers in detail. Their official conclusion, documented in a report that is publicly available through Colorado Public Records: the incidents were likely the result of optical phenomena specific to the road's profile combined with the reflective properties of road surface materials at certain temperatures interacting with vehicle headlights to create the perception of a following vehicle. 47 drivers. The same experience. An official explanation that several of the interviewed drivers described as completely inadequate to what they had experienced. The report stopped in 2011. Not because the State Patrol explained it. Because word traveled in the driver community and drivers began avoiding that stretch of I-70 at night. The 40-mile stretch is still there. Drivers still use it during the day. At night, on that section of highway, the trucks are notably few. Not all the figures drivers encounter are silent or threatening or inexplicable in a frightening way. Some of them deliver warnings. This category of account is rarer than the others. And it is the one that drivers speak about most carefully, most quietly, with the most evident reluctance, because it requires the teller to claim not just that they saw something strange, but that the strange thing communicated something that subsequently proved meaningful. Earl Hutchins has driven for 29 years. He is a methodical man who keeps his logbooks with a precision that his company has noted and commended. He is not given to storytelling for its own sake. In 2013, he picked up a hitchhiker. He knows he should not have. Company policy. Personal safety. He knows the rules. He had followed the rules for 22 years without exception. That night, something made him stop. An older man. Standing on the shoulder of a Mississippi highway at 2 a.m. Not thumbing, just standing, the way the figures in these stories always stand. Looking at the road. Earl stopped. The man got in. He smelled of nothing, no smoke, no food, no the specific human scent that people carry. Earl noticed this. He attributed it to the circumstances and started driving. The man did not speak for 40 minutes. Then he said, "There is something wrong with your front left tire. You should stop at the next exit." Earl checked his tire pressure indicator. All normal. He drove on. The man said, "Please stop at the next exit." Earl pulled off at the next exit. He got out and checked the front left tire. There was a bolt in it. Deep in the tread. The slow leak it was creating had not yet registered on his pressure indicator but had degraded the tire to a point where, at highway speed over the next few miles, the probability of a blowout was substantial. He replaced the tire. He got back in the cab. The man was not there. He had been in the locked cab. Earl had not heard the door open. He had not seen the man exit the vehicle. The cab was empty. Earl sat in the truck stop parking lot for an hour. He has told this story 4 times in 29 years. He is not a person who needs to be believed. He is a person who knows what happened. He says, "I don't know what he was. I know that tire would have blown on the highway in the dark, and I know what happens when an 18-wheeler has a front blowout at 65 miles an hour." He pauses. He says, "I know I should not have stopped for him." He pauses again. He says, "I am glad I did." Every major highway in America has a stretch. A specific stretch. Sometimes 5 miles. Sometimes 20. Sometimes just a few hundred yards at a particular curve or bridge or grade change. A stretch that drivers know, that they warn each other about, that experienced drivers on those routes will acknowledge, in the specific understated language of the road, when the subject comes, even obliquely, up. These stretches are not marked. They are not official. They exist only in the collective memory of the people who drive them. The stretch on I-10 between Phoenix and Tucson, where drivers report seeing lights in the desert that pace the vehicles on the highway. Not road lights. Not ranch lights. Moving lights. Keeping pace with the trucks. The stretch on US 93 in Nevada, which runs through the Mojave and is already the kind of road that makes you check your fuel gauge twice, where the radio cuts out regardless of signal strength at a specific mile marker and does not come back for exactly 11 miles. The stretch on I-90 in the Badlands of South Dakota, where the temperature inside cabs drops without apparent cause. In summer, without any change in the outside temperature. For a specific stretch of road that passes a location that native Lakota people have understood for centuries as something particular. The stretch on I-81 in Virginia, where drivers report headlights in their mirrors that disappear when approached by any other vehicle. The stretch on Route 66, where else, between Gallup and Albuquerque, New Mexico, where the CB radio picks up voices speaking in a language that nobody who has heard it has been able to identify. These stretches are known. The knowledge is informal and real and passed between drivers with the specific seriousness that professional people reserve for information that matters. New drivers learn them eventually. Not from their companies. Not from any official source. From other drivers. In the specific way that the road community shares what it knows. Quietly, practically, without drama. It is not about fear. It is about information. This road does this thing. Know that. Decide what you want to do with it. Most drivers, when they see something they cannot explain, make a calculation. The calculation is practical and immediate. Do I stop, or do I keep driving? Most keep driving. Because stopping on a dark highway at 3 a.m. to investigate something that may or may not be what it appears to be is not a safe choice. Because the load needs to be delivered. Because there is a rational explanation for everything, and finding it is not a truck driver's job at 3 in the morning. But some stop. What they find, or do not find, is the subject of this section. Kevin Marsh stopped on a rural Arkansas highway in 2016. He stopped because he saw a car off the road, in a ditch, with its hazard lights running. He was the first driver to come upon it. He stopped because the right thing to do was to stop. The car was empty. Keys in the ignition. Engine running. Hazard lights on. A woman's handbag on the passenger seat, wallet inside, credit cards, cash, phone. A child's stuffed animal in the back seat. He called 911. He waited. Deputies arrived. They searched the area. They found nothing. No woman. No child. No footprints in the soft earth of the ditch leading away from the car. No indication of how the car got into the ditch. No tire marks. No damage consistent with the vehicle having run off the road. A car that appeared to have been driven into a ditch by someone who then got out and took nothing with them and left no trace. The case was reported as a missing persons incident. Kevin was interviewed by the sheriff's department. He told them what he had seen. He is not aware of any resolution. He has searched online periodically for news about the case. He has found nothing. The woman whose bag was in that car. The child whose stuffed animal was in the back seat. He thinks about them. He has thought about them for 8 years. He hopes there is an explanation he is not aware of. He hopes the explanation is a good one. He is not sure it is. The trucking community has a specific relationship with the inexplicable. It is not a community that, in general, runs toward the supernatural as an explanation for anything. These are practical people whose work requires acute observation, sound judgment, and the consistent ability to distinguish between what is real and what is not. Their safety depends on this. Their livelihood depends on this. And yet, among those who have driven the dark roads long enough, among the drivers with 7 figures of miles behind them and the particular perspective that comes from having been alone on American highways for literally years of their lives, accumulated. Among these people, the conversation about what the road produces is not a fringe conversation. It is ordinary. It is matter of fact. It happens at truck stops, in the early hours of the morning, over coffee that has been sitting on the burner since the previous shift. It happens between drivers who have never met and will never meet again, who have minutes before their respective loads need to move, who are exchanging information the way professionals exchange information about any aspect of their shared work. There are online forums where this exchange happens at scale. Tens of thousands of drivers sharing accounts, asking questions, comparing roads, comparing experiences. The threads on these forums are remarkable for their tone, not the hysterical register of sensationalized horror, but the methodical register of people comparing observations and looking for patterns. The patterns they find are consistent enough to be disturbing. The same roads come up repeatedly. The same types of encounter. The same time windows. The 2 to 4 a.m. window appears in more accounts than any other, which aligns with what sleep scientists identify as the hours when the human body's resistance to the altered states of deep night is at its absolute lowest. The community has developed, organically and over decades, a practical body of knowledge about the highway at night. Not superstition. Not folklore for its own sake. But information, shared and updated and tested against experience, about the roads and the things that happen on them. It is, in a strange way, the most practical possible response to the impractical things that the dark road produces. You cannot explain them. You can know about them. You can make informed decisions about where to drive and when and what to do if you see something that does not have a ready explanation. This is what the community does. This is how it handles what the night gives it. Not every strange story from the night road is supernatural in nature. Some of them are human. And the human ones are, in their own way, as disturbing as anything with no rational explanation. The American highway at night is a place where crime happens that does not always make the news. Where vehicles are used as weapons. Where isolated drivers are targeted by people who understand the logistics of the night road and use that understanding for harm. The fake accident. This is a documented criminal technique. A vehicle placed strategically in the road or on the shoulder, appearing to be in distress, to cause a truck to stop. The stopped truck, large, full of freight, operated by a single driver, is vulnerable in ways that a stopped car is not. This happens. It is documented in law enforcement reports across multiple states. Drivers are specifically trained to recognize it. To call 911 rather than stop. To report the location and keep driving. The forced stoppage. Vehicles that cut off trucks at highway speed, forcing them to brake hard, sometimes causing the truck to jackknife or the load to shift, and then using the resulting chaos to rob the driver or the freight. The phantom police. Vehicles with emergency lights that pull over trucks on remote stretches of highway. Not real law enforcement. The lights are bought online. The uniforms are convincing. The driver, alone on a dark road, sees lights and pulls over. Experienced drivers know, on a dark road at night, if lights pull you over, drive to the nearest lit area. A gas station. A truck stop. A populated exit. Legitimate law enforcement will follow you. Illegitimate emergency lights depend on your compliance in isolation. These practical dangers share the night road with the inexplicable ones. And drivers navigate both. With the same practical methodology. The same calm assessment. The same underlying commitment to delivering the load and going home. The night road asks a lot of the people who work it. Most of them give it what it asks. Night after night. Mile after mile. And carry what they have seen in the specific private way of people who have witnessed things they cannot share with the people who have not been there. I want to spend some time here, not on the stories, but on what the stories mean to the people who live them. Because the easy narrative, the narrative that these are simply frightened people misinterpreting the products of fatigue, misses something important about who these people are and what they are actually saying. These are not easily frightened people. They have driven through blizzards and ice storms and fog so thick the road disappears. They have managed blowouts at highway speed and brake failures on mountain grades and every mechanical catastrophe that an 18-wheeler can produce. They work in one of the most physically demanding and genuinely dangerous occupations in America. Truck driving consistently ranks in the top 10 most dangerous jobs in the country by fatality rate. These are not people who are frightened by ordinary things. When they say they saw something they cannot explain, when they say this quietly, carefully, with the evident reluctance of people who are aware of how it sounds, they are not reaching for sensation. They are reporting an observation. What the darkness does to these drivers, over years of night road work, is something that resists easy categorization. Some of them say it has made them more open, more willing to accept that the world contains things that do not fit the categories we have been given, more humble about the limits of what human perception and rational framework can account for. Some of them say it has made them more practical in a specific way, that knowing the road contains things you cannot explain has made them more careful observers, more precise about what they actually see versus what they interpret, more rigorous about distinguishing the two. Some of them say it has changed their relationship with silence, with darkness, with being alone, not in a frightening way, in the way that significant experiences change your relationship with the conditions in which they occurred. And some of them, not all, but some, say that what the darkness has given them, beyond the specific encounters and the inexplicable sightings, is a sense of the road as something with its own reality. Not just asphalt and painted lines and mile markers. Something that has been traveled by enough people, over enough years, that it carries its own weight of human experience in its surface. This is not a mystical claim, or it is not intended as one. It is an observation, made by people who have spent more time on the American highway than anyone else, about what the highway is and what it contains. The rest of us drive through it in daylight, in company, with destinations in mind and time pressure and radio and the comfortable noise of normal life around us. The drivers drive through it at night, alone, 4 hours that do not end, with nothing but the road and the dark and whatever the dark contains. What the dark contains, they have learned, is more than we know. We have reached the end of the highway, the end of this particular stretch of it, at least. What do we do with these stories? The rational mind wants to find the exit, the logical off-ramp, the explanation that returns everything to the ordinary. And for many of these accounts, the rational explanation is available. Fatigue, highway hypnosis, the specific perceptual vulnerabilities of a human brain running on caffeine and institutional coffee at 3:30 in the morning on a featureless road. These explanations account for some of what you have heard tonight. But they do not account for all of it. They do not account for the 2 drivers who independently reported the same figure on the same Nevada road years apart. They do not account for the 47 Colorado State Patrol reports from drivers who described the identical experience at the identical mile marker. They do not account for the accident that Thomas Briggs saw at the exact location where 4 people died 31 years before. They do not account for Earl Hutchins and the bolt in the tire and the man who was not there when the cab door had not opened. These accounts are not explained by fatigue. They are explained by something else. Or they are not explained at all. And the honest position, which the drivers who lived these experiences generally adopt, is the second one. Not explained. Known, but not explained. Experienced, but not understood. Seen and heard and felt by people who are as reliable as any witness category you could name. Professional, experienced, accustomed to the environment, trained in the practical consequences of misperception. What the night road leaves behind, in the people who work it, is a specific and permanent form of knowledge. The knowledge that the world is larger than the categories we use to describe it. That the American highway at night is a different country from the American highway at noon. That in the miles and hours between midnight and dawn, things happen that do not fit the frame. Most of us will never know this firsthand. Most of us sleep through the hours when the trucks move and the dark holds what it holds. But somewhere out there, right now, as you listen to this, as you sit in whatever lit and comfortable space you occupy, an 18-wheeler is moving through the dark on an empty highway in the middle of somewhere you have never been. The driver is alone. The CB is quiet. The coffee is going cold in the cup holder. And in the mirror, just for a moment, there is something. Something that was not there before. The driver's hands tighten on the wheel. The eyes go to the mirror. Then back to the road. Then to the mirror again. Whatever it was, it is gone. The driver breathes out. The road continues. The miles accumulate. The load gets where it is going. And the driver carries what was seen in the specific private way of people who have been on the dark road long enough to know what it gives you. And know that you do not talk about it until you are ready. And know that when you are ready, there is always someone at the next truck stop who will nod, slowly, and not look surprised. And say, "Yeah, I know that road."